Ghosts have somehow moved into my day.
Ose Chapter 1. Ose, Lucent Sanctuary, Punjar. Ose flexed his right hand slowly, trying to focus on something other than the two ghostly shapes dancing through the courtyard. He perched on the edge of a stone bench just outside the entrance to the Lucent Sanctuary, waiting for Sai, his life partner, to get off work. Two ghosts wandered around him, half sinking into the neat stone tile floor, wrapping gently around the large urns filled with flowering bushes, and pretending to play in the tiled fountain splashing in one corner. The last 6 months had been full of memories presenting themselves to Ose as incorporeal beings. Sometimes they spoke to him, but most of the time they just floated about. Sai was a good man, but Ose doubted he'd understand about the phantoms. Ose was okay with the ghosts. They were friends. He shook his head at himself. Not friends. Targets. Prizes. Goals. The two translucent forms wafting about now were shaped like Elenin and her daughter, Duck. Cycles ago, before he had been expelled from the service, he'd hunted them both, along with the other visitors that had been pulled forward from the pass. It had been his job. A voice rang through the courtyard. "Ose, there you are." A short man strode towards Ose, one finger pointing. Out of the corner of his eye, Ose saw the ghosts of Elenin and Duck waft into the fountain and disappear. Las Kester. What a surprise. Ose looked down at the top of Las Kester's balding head as the tiny man waved his arms. "I'm here for your data on the visitors. Hand it over," demanded Kester. Running his hand through his sandy hair, Ose took a deep breath. "Las Kester, I understand you want my notes," he said firmly. "As I've said before, I don't have them. They are back at the temple along with the rest of my old belongings." Kester smiled thinly. "You're not fooling anyone. You know more than you've told us. If you think you're safe hiding here on Punjar, you're mistaken." Ose closed his eyes for a moment and wished he were anywhere else. The intricate pattern that covered his body flared slightly, a brief flash of silver, blue, and gold. "You were the architect of my expulsion, Kester. It was your decision to have me escorted from the temple with nothing but the robes on my back." He glanced over as a young couple entered the courtyard. They examined the plant's lush blossoms, seemingly oblivious to the two men arguing. "It's been a full cycle since then. 13 months of you badgering me for information I don't have. You have no right to refuse to cooperate with us." Kester glared up at Ose. "Why continue to lie? Some misguided loyalty to the visitors?" Las Kester snorted and smoothed the front of his bright gold robe. Shame twinged through Ose at his own simple black tunic and pants. He had once worn the jewel-toned robes of the service himself. He pushed his embarrassment away and straightened his shoulders. "My notes were left on my datapad. The pad was left on the dining room table in my quarters at the temple. Surely the service has checked my old rooms." Ose heard a note of pleading creep into his voice and strengthened his tone. "We've gone over this before. I will continue to seek you out until you tell the truth." Las Kester's voice increased in volume. "There is no datapad on your dining room table. There are no notes." His voice dropped to a hiss. "If you are unwilling to help me voluntarily, then I will take you in for questioning." Ose shrugged, exaggerating the movement a bit to make a point of his indifference. He had been taken in for questioning a few times already. The service liked to haul him in and make him stay a week or so in a cell now and then. A small cell, since Ose was tall and lanky. The thought of having to crouch in captivity yet again made his stomach turn, but he held fast. Discomfort was no real threat, and there were no tricks Las Kester could use to question him that Ose didn't already know. "You are an idiot." Kester took a deep breath, and his voice softened. "Ose, you know more about the visitors than anyone else. Surely with your knowledge, your extensive experience interacting with them, you have ideas about the best way to use the first visitor to fulfill the prophecy. We have been trying for over a cycle now, but nothing is happening. We tried every ritual we can find in the records, but nothing works. Keeping his face neutral, Ose held his tongue. Last Kester gave a smile. Just think how beloved the visitors will be once we succeed with the first and the prophecy is fulfilled. The entire galaxy will adore them, celebrate them. They'll be even more famous. A wave of exhaustion washed through Ose. Last Kester, there are billions of beings in this galaxy, millions of races and species, all of them different. But there are only 129 visitors, and they are the last of the Homo sapiens. When they die, their race dies with them. Ose searched Kester's face, looking for any hint of understanding. They have been hounded ever since they were pulled forward from the past. The last thing the visitors want is more attention. The visitors are scrambling to stay alive on that hideous planet of theirs, snorted Kester. Are you going to be the one that keeps them ignored, unnoticed on Thread? You'd be amazed what opportunities would open up for them with just a little more fame, Ose. Last Kester seemed to enjoy saying Ose's name without his old title of last. Ose felt his disgrace grind in deeper. Kester's eyes wandered around the flowers planted near the gate, as if to seek inspiration. Listen, at minimum, it can't hurt for the visitors to get a bit more media attention. He bounced on the balls of his feet as he expanded on his idea, the small fluffs of white hair on the sides of his head fluttering. Set up a meeting between the visitors and the service, and the visitors will reap the rewards of renewed galactic interest. Ose paused for a moment to rein in his temper. You seem to be forgetting that they spent a cycle being hunted by the service. Yet you were a key participant in the service's hunt, said Last Kester. He grinned and pointed his finger at Ose. If I'm not mistaken, you spent, 12, 13 months tracking down visitors? It took you just over a cycle to bring in, 20 visitors? 30? Ose pressed his lips together. Last Kester was right. He had hunted the visitors, bringing them to the service's temple on Kesu whenever he caught them. He had been brutally efficient, corralling people who had already been yanked forward through time, imprisoned, experimented on. He had told himself back then that he was searching for the first visitor, but in retrospect, he had loved it. The chase, the capture, the power. He focused on the little man standing before him and did his best to think clearly. A lot had happened since the days of the hunt. Some of the visitors had forgiven him. Others still hated him. Last Kester, I acknowledge my participation in the hunt. At the time, I was doing what I thought was right. Now I am older and wiser, and once more, I'm doing what I think is right, which is to leave the visitors alone so they can live their lives out in peace. Last Kester's face contorted. We cannot leave them alone. The first visitor is the only person that can fulfill the prophecy. We have found her, but the bridge eludes us. The young couple openly stared at the two men. Kester leaned in, his breath rising sour as he whispered, Either you tell me where your notes are, or I will have you detained for questioning. Ose stood quietly, stomach churning, as Last Kester started yelling again, his shouts echoing through the courtyard. Fran. Thrid. Fran eyed the ground around her, scanning for the puffs of steam that meant escaping gas, in between bracing herself against intermittent gusts of wind. Her mission was to find a suitable site to build a third town. All she could think about was the fact that she was outside, far from the protected dome town in which she lived. All around her were huge gray-green boulders towering over her, like a giant stone maze. In the distance, the blue-green trees and vines of the Sualist jungle towered over the rocks looming above her. Her goal was a stretch of clear ground, made barren by some force of nature, spotted by an aerial survey. Her job was to find the clearing, get as far into open space as she dared, do a few tests to find out why the ground was barren, and then get back to the tunnel area. The air around her was a sickly greenish color, and she was grateful for her survival suit. She had volunteered for this, trained for this, and was suited up in special gear for this. It was still terrifying. Fran, a visitor, lived in Dome 1 on the planet Thread. The planet had been given to the visitors as compensation for being kidnapped, yanked forward hundreds of thousands of years, experimented on, and permanently changed by the Thridians. Fran still thought it was a bum deal. The visitors had tried to make the best of their new planet and had formed an alliance with the Grissle, a burly, furred race that spent most of their time underground. The Grissle had agreed to build 3 domes on Thread and terraform the planet in exchange for the visitors allowing some Grissle families to experiment with living in the domes. The Grissle were historically a wandering race, but they saw Thread as a study in living in one place. The second dome was mostly built, and once they found the site for the third dome, the Grissle would be halfway done with their part of the bargain. It had taken the Grissle 3 weeks to tunnel the 14-kilometer distance between Dome 1 and the possible new build site for Dome 3. They had brought Fran to the edge of one of their pressurized tunnels, then collapsed the end behind her to seal it. Fran had kept to the plan and dug her way up to the surface, climbing up to stand between the towering stones, the sky gray-green above and the ground hard beneath her feet, scoured bare by the wind. Fran kept an eye on the map projected onto the inside of her helmet as she navigated her way through the rocks. When she reached the clearing, she put 1 foot in front of her and tested the ground. It felt solid. Taking a step, she tested the next bit of soil with the other foot. This planet was deadly. Inside Dome 1, she had a regular house, in a pleasant town with breathable air. Outside the dome, plants were sentient and predatory. There were carnivores with enormous heads filled with rows of fangs. The air was poisonous, the ground was riddled with gas vents that burst into flames, and the soil was toxic. Fran walked slowly forward, testing each step before she committed her weight. The ground trembled slightly. She toggled her comm unit with her chin. "I'm picking up vibrations through my feet." "Okay, hold your position." Tessa's voice came through, calm and clear. She was back in the dome watching via the small hovering globe floating just a few feet away from Fran. Tess ran the planetary reconnaissance team, mapping out the planet and advising where major infrastructure should be placed. Fran stood still and breathed as deliberately as she could. "Go ahead and toss out a shock disruptor," said Tess through the comm. Fran pulled the small canister off her belt, twisted the upper half around, and hurled it as far as she could into the clearing. The canister arced into the air and hit the ground. Fran crouched down, watching closely. She, like all the visitors, had been changed by their captors, and her eyesight was now exceptional. The Thridians had done some serious experimenting with the humans they'd brought forward from Earth. One of the key changes that all the visitors endured was a skin suit. It was a thin layer that covered their skin and could be shifted around to cover different parts of their body at will, though it could never be completely removed. Fran's was blue and green if she let the original colors show. Most of the time she kept her skin suit black, a hard-earned skill that she had learned in order to hide in the dark Thridian prison lab. Fran noticed now under her transparent gloves that her skin suit was shifting out of black and into green and blue. This was a lapse in discipline she hadn't experienced in a long time. Fran took a deep breath and focused her mind. Her skin suit went black. The shock disruptor had extended small support struts out onto the ground and was busy drilling a probe into the hard surface underneath. When it got about a meter down, it sent a shock wave through the subsurface soil, designed to either wake up whatever was there or destroy it. Fran felt the ground underneath her tremble as the shock wave passed under her. She stayed crouched, watching the cylinder closely. The soil around the disruptor shifted slightly, and the vibrations under Fran's feet increased. She kept her eyes on the center of the clearing and tried to make herself smaller. "Fran, we're picking up something on the orb. Something rather large is moving subsurface. Might be a good time to head back to the tunnel." Fran jumped to her feet, and ran full tilt back the way she had come, leaping over anything in her path and trying to keep an eye on her map. Weaving through the boulders was more difficult while running, but she kept on her feet and got to the tunnel area just in time to see a Grissle in a survival suit pop out of the ground, his huge paws shoving dirt aside. It was Uret, the dig team lead. He dove back into the tunnel as soon as he saw Fran, and she slid the last few feet to the opening and dropped in past him. Dirt rained on her helmet as Uret sealed up the tunnel, and Fran felt her survival suit automatically unseal as the tunnel became pressurized. The two of them raced down the dim passageway. Fran updated Tess as she tried to run as fast as she could. "Tess, damn, sorry, I think I lost the globe. I made it stay behind so we could see what happened, no worries. You okay? We're in the tunnel and heading east, no injuries. Keep moving." "No kidding." Fran could hear a rumbling above her, like rushing water. She spared a glance for Uret. Grissle were not designed to run with their huge arms and barrel chests. Fran slowed her pace and matched strides with Uret. He lifted his chin in a Grissle sign of approval, and they raced forward as the world above their tunnel roared. Chapter 2. Ose, Lucent Sanctuary, Punjar. Ose watched as last Kester strode out of the courtyard to his waiting flitter. The man was insufferable. The fountain was still burbling, the flowers still bursting with color, but the day seemed dull, tarnished. With deliberate care, Ose sat down on a bench and waited for Sai to get off work. He was glad Sai had not witnessed his argument with Kester. Though he knew it was likely, the pressure in his own chest was being felt by his partner even now. The two of them had been bonded for decades, locked in a relationship based on love, but reinforced by the symbiote they had both borne since birth. Whatever one was feeling, the other felt as well, like a distant echo. All Punj were hosts to the symbiote, born with a few threads of it within their bodies from their parents. As each Punj grew, so did their own symbiote, spreading throughout their nervous system, extending into their muscles and organs, and shining softly in unique patterns on their skin. Ose's pattern was spiral-shaped, a delicate golden color that radiated warmth. Sai's pattern was lightning-shaped, a cool silver blue. Ose took a deep breath and considered heading to Sai's office inside the sanctuary, but Kester's visit still rang around and through him. It was better just to sit still and breathe. A small bird peeped in a bush, and a butterfly wandered by. Gradually, Ose's breathing slowed. It unnerved him how easily he got upset now. A few cycles ago, an argument with Kester would have been nothing, a brief delay before a meeting, a side note in his daily journal. Now, just seeing someone in service robes set his pulse racing. He let his gaze float over the courtyard, now empty but for him and the lone butterfly. A blur near one of the bushes caught his eye. He swallowed, hopeful. The blur resolved into a transparent figure, a woman, tall and blonde, her face stern. "Elenin," whispered Ose. He knew she was his overtaxed mind's version of a safety net, and completely unreal, an exterior illusion based on an interior fantasy. It was all right. A bit of madness was fine if it kept him sane. The ghostly Elenin moved forward until she was standing in front of Ose. "You won't betray us, will you?" "Never," breathed Ose. "Good," said Elenin. "Because if you do, it's not me that will suffer. It will be Duck, my daughter. She's only 6. Do you want her imprisoned? Experimented on?" Ose stood up. "You know I'd never do anything that would harm Duck, or you. Any of you." His voice was loud in the empty courtyard. Elenin nodded. She looked past him and held out her hand. It passed straight through him. He looked down at the ghostly arm disappearing into his chest and wished he could feel just a hint of its presence, a bit of cold air or the slightest sensation of pressure. But there was nothing. She was not real. Movement caught his eye, and a small girl came from behind him, holding on to Elenin's hand. Duck. In real life, Duck had deep brown skin and black hair, but this version of her was a transparent, glowing blue. Uncle Ose, are you okay? Duck's voice was light, like the peeps of the bird in the bush. I think you need to have some noodles and take a nap. Ose's face pinched together. Tears threatened to gather. He kneeled in front of the little girl. Thank you. I will do that. What do you think I should do about last Kester? Your mother is worried that I'll betray you and your family. Are you worried too? He could feel Eleanor bristle above him. She is a child, Ose. You don't ask such questions of a child. Eleanor's voice was firm. Ose stood up. Duck is honest. I value her advice. His face reddened. Besides, the two of you are generated by my own brain. You might be the only way I can give myself decent counsel. You should ask Auntie Fran, or I can ask her. I just think you should noodle and nap, said Duck. One hand was still holding her mother's firmly. The other was making flapping motions, mimicking the butterfly. Ose watched Duck's hand flutter, wondering what part of his mind had captured her so perfectly. He didn't consider himself truly mad, though lately he'd spent more time in conversation with the people inside his head than he did with the real people around him. Kester's bluffing, said Eleanor suddenly. He has neither the power nor the intention to harm you. He smiled at her. She was right. Kester would have already brought him in if he had any real authority in the matter. A voice rang through the courtyard, startling Ose. My love, you're here. Why didn't you come to my office? Sai strode towards him, lean, confident, with deep black eyes and brown wavy hair, his own pattern shining silver blue on his dark skin, with Ose's golden spirals woven through. Ose wrapped his arms around Sai as the ghost-like Eleanor and Duck wafted away like blown smoke. Let's go home, said Sai. Ose and Sai walked down the sandy pathway beside the lake. The flight to Ose's family estate had been peaceful, and Ose's stomach had settled. Here the water was still, and Ose idly wondered if the fish had come out of hibernation yet. A twinge of shame ran through him. He should be helping his mother take care of these grounds. He should know when the fish would wake this year. This was their family estate, and his father had trusted him to keep it flourishing. You're awfully quiet, Ose. What are you up to? Said Sai, his eyes narrowing in mock suspicion. Spill it. Sai, my dear, I'm not up to anything, replied Ose. He searched his mind for a topic other than his failure. I'm simply being logical. I have to go to Thrid and spend some time with the visitors. There's no other way to determine who's the first. Sai paused, then spoke softly. Don't pester the visitors. They're happy on Thrid. They don't want you there. You've been told not to go. Don't go. I need to. We need to find the first. One of the visitors on Thrid is the first. Ose turned down the path that led to the lake house. Sai frowned. Ose, why are you insisting on being a part of the visitors' lives? Why don't you just focus on any one of the myriad beings that might actually want you around, rather than those that don't? Besides, the service has already found the first. She's at the temple in Hutlam, diligently going through whatever ritual the service has decided will fulfill the prophecy. Ose shook his head. You know as well as I do that woman is not the first. She's part of a long con that's being played on the service, and once they figure it out, they'll need the real first. And you think that if you show up with the correct one, that they'll let you back into the service? Asked Sai. Do you really want to be a part of all that again? Ose looked down at the ground. He did. By the faces, he did. It wasn't just the robes or the title. The service was woven through the fabric of the galaxy. As ambassadors, advisors, and merchants, being in the service meant having his finger on the pulse of the galaxy. Originally a mercantile organization, the service had grown and prospered for millennia, propelled by a set of rules they adhered to stringently. They never interfered in politics outside the service. They took only unwanted children, orphans, or volunteers to fill their ranks. and they offered the use of their technology at very reasonable prices. Anyone could join the service if they were willing to give up their former life. The halls of the temples were filled with every type of being, most of which only knew life within the service. Ose had joined the service quite young, and his quest for power within its intricate political structure had spanned decades. Ose had not chosen to leave the service. He had been forced out, and Sai was right. He did want back in. Ose spoke slowly, trying to pick his words carefully. Sai, I know that you're happy here on Punjar and that your work fulfills you. I am not happy here. I'm not happy anywhere because I know what I need to do and I'm not doing it. His partner stopped and looked out over the water. I don't understand why you're so devoted to the service. If they ever make you a last again, it would be as part of a ruse. You can't trust them. I don't want to get back into the service, lied Ose. I just need to find the first. Why? Sai's face looked pained. You hate the service, you love the visitors. Why still search for the fulfillment of a prophecy that only the service cares about? Is this some kind of residual loyalty? My loyalty is to you, my family, and the visitors, said Ose. But if that prophecy does not get fulfilled, the impact on the galaxy will be profound. I have to find the first. Because you think the prophecy is true, said Sai. You think the galaxy will crumble if the first isn't found to do whatever magical thing the service expects from them. Sai, the prophecy is not some mystical mumbo-jumbo. Ose tried to keep his voice level. It's a very specific set of instructions on how to repower the source. The source recharges at least 1/3 of the power-generating machinery in the galaxy. If those machines lose their power source, huge swaths of our interplanetary economy will grind to a halt. It's not magic, it's science. Ose gazed out over the lake and took a deep breath. I have to find the first. So, it's science, but you need a mystical prophecy at the same time? Asked Sai. And how will you know who the first is? And if you do figure that out, what will you do? Run to the service and tell them? No. Ose shook his head. I know how they treat that woman they think is the first. Endless experiments that are likely to end in her death. A chill worked his way up his spine. When we find the first, we'll need to hide her, keep her safe, and figure out a way to fulfill the prophecy without letting the service know she's been found. Now I'm completely confused, said Sai. You want to find the first so you can save the service, but you don't trust the service enough to let them know they're being saved until after you save them. Exactly, said Ose. Sai, the problem is not the existence of the service. The problem is that the service leadership is filled with people who are willing to do anything to fulfill the prophecy, even if it means the death of the visitors. There must be a way to recharge the source without killing anyone. Ose, I don't think you're thinking this all the way through. If you believe that the prophecy must be fulfilled and the service saved at all costs, then you need to accept that the first might be harmed in the process. Ose blanched. No, I cannot accept that. We've been through this before, said Sai. So, you know what I must do, said Ose. The initial 4 visitors that were pulled through are all on thread. One of them is the first. I need to find a way to get back onto that planet and into their daily lives. Sai took Ose's hand. That won't be easy. The visitors have been very clear. You're not welcome on thread. Indeed, said Ose dryly. I seem to be required in places I don't want to go and banned from the one planet I'm dying to visit.